Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. My name is Jess. Today's video is going to be the mid-year freakout book tag, and it has been a long time since I have done a tag video, and I'm very excited to be doing this one. Yeah, it's just kind of an opportunity to look back at some of the books that I have read already and consider what I plan to read in the rest of the year. So without further ado, let's jump in. I will say that I'm not going to tag anyone specifically. I wasn't tagged, I just saw the video doing the rounds and thought that it looked like a fun one to do. So I'll leave a list of the questions in the description bar down below. If you are interested in doing the video, then consider yourself tagged by me, and feel free to come back and leave a link to your video if you do decide to do the tag as well, and I will be sure to go along and have a look. So I have all the questions on my phone, and question number one is best book you have read so far, and my answer for this is going to be a little bit of a cop-out, which also incidentally is a phrase that I will probably use a lot in this video, so apologies in advance, but I have picked two because I was unable to just pick one. So the first book was actually incidentally the first book that I read at all in 2021, and that is Lovely War by Julie Berry, and oh my goodness me, I adored this book so much. So this is historical fiction. We are following a romance set in World War II, but the twist is that this story is being narrated by the Greek gods, and that combination sounds like it just absolutely should not work, and yet it just does, and it makes for an incredible, moving, wonderful story that just hit the spot for me, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. What a way to start my reading year for 2021. Honestly, just so flipping good. And then we have The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden, which is the final book in the Winter Night trilogy. I want to say Winter Night trilogy. Now I'm doubting myself. I think it's the Winter Night trilogy. And again, I gave this 5 stars primarily because this was just an incredible final book to this trilogy. I mean, I loved and enjoyed the other 2 books, but this one just blew me away. So this is Russian inspired historical fiction with a little bit of fantasy blended through. We're following a young girl who is able to see and interact with old Russian spirits and gods, and so she kind of bridges the gap between the modern progressive situation in Russia and then the old, and it's just so good, so good. Exactly the same as Lovely War. It just blew me away, and so I was utterly unable to choose between the 2 of these as to my favourite book so far. I think probably for a standalone, this one I would highly recommend. If you are into trilogies, then this one. Question number 2 is best sequel you have read so far. So for this, I would like to throw in The Girl in the Tower, which is book 2 of the Winter Night trilogy, because I read this and then I read this pretty close together. This does fall a little bit into the trap of being a bridge between book 1 and book 3, but it was still pretty darn good in its own right. But I would also like to mention Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, which is a book that I know I have talked about so much, possibly in my last 3 if not 4 videos I have talked about this book, so I apologise, but it's adult high fantasy. It's the final book in the Farseer trilogy, and I just love it because it's the point when we begin to see all the things coming together, everything that Robin Hobb has laid the groundwork for in her earlier books and everything she is setting up for in the future books. We begin to see it playing out in this book, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's great, and I will never stop recommending Robin Hobb because I think she is highly underrated in the world of fantasy books. Question number 3, new release not yet read but want to. So I was only really excited for 2 releases this year: Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid and The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. Both books I have bought and read and love. So this was a little bit tricky for me to answer. I am also excited about the release of The Shadow of the Gods by John McGlynn, but that is the first book in a new Norse inspired fantasy series, and I'm just not in a place right now to start an epic fantasy series that only the first book has been released, and it could be many, many years before another book is released or before the series is written in full. So although I'm very excited about it, and James has already listened to it and said it's brilliant, I'm not going to be committing to reading that this year. So I think the book that I am the most excited for that's a new release that I would like to read, and I'm probably wrong that it was released this year, but we're going to go with it now anyway, is Law by Alexandra Bracken. And this is a book that I have so very nearly purchased on a number of occasions that at this point it's just inevitable that it's going to happen. I constantly pick it up and think to myself, that sounds fantastic, and then I put it down and walk away. I'll end up with a copy in my hands before too long, I'm sure. So this is fantasy about 9 Greek gods who basically every 7 years are forced to walk the earth as mortals, and whilst they are on earth they are hunted by descendants of ancient bloodlines who want to kill them and steal their power and their immortality, I think. And it just sounds so good. It sounds like the type of book that I would just absolutely love, and as I say, I don't know why I keep picking it up and putting it down, because I just think that I'm going to really, really enjoy it. So that is probably the one that I am the most excited for, that I know I'll almost certainly read this year. Question 4, most anticipated read for the rest of the year. I know that this video must actually be really, really boring, because again, I found this really difficult. I'm not really into long-term planning for my reading because I'm very much a mood reader. I tend to plan seasonally and then not really think about it too much. I will say that I would love to read the Ember Quartet by Sabaa Tahir. So the 4th and final book comes out in paperback in December. I own the first 3, so I'd probably like to read and finish that in the autumn, so before the end of 2021. So they are Roman inspired fantasy. Don't know too much about them other than that they are very popular and very well received. Again, James, my husband, has read them and really, really enjoyed them and recommended them. So yeah, that is my answer for question 4. Question 5 is biggest disappointment so far, and I know that this is going to be a really unpopular answer, but let me just grab it. It has to be, for me, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This was a highly anticipated book for me, and on paper it sounds like the kind of book that I would just absolutely love, but I disliked it so much that it literally killed my desire to read, and it threw me into the biggest reading slump. I have not been in such a big reading slump in the longest time, and it all came down to me picking this book up. As I say, on paper it sounds like the kind of book that I would absolutely adore. So we are following Addie LaRue, who makes a deal with a spirit that she will never die. She will remain the age that she is when she makes the agreement. She will never fall ill, or she can't be killed. You know, her life is her own until she has had enough, and then she will give her soul to this spirit. But the twist is that she will then become forgettable. So as soon as she leaves a room, she disappears from the minds of the people in there, until one day she walks into a bookstore and the person there, Henry, remembers her. And the story kind of unfolds from there. We flash backwards and forwards. We flash backwards to Addie as she is going through the years up to the present day, and then we're following the present day storyline between Addie and Henry and their kind of blossoming romance, as well as Addie's relationship with this spirit, which continues on because he keeps trying to persuade her to give her soul to him. So there is a lot going on, and there was a lot of potential in this book, and as I say, highly, highly anticipated for me, but it just fell so short of where I thought that it could go, and not that much happens, and I really struggled to understand the purpose or the point of it. And I am, by my own admission, I'm quite happy to read storylines that are quiet, storylines that tend to meander, that take a while to get somewhere, but I felt like the author spent a lot of time building this sense of anticipation for it to nosedive at the end and just not go anywhere or do anything. Yeah, Really disappointed because I really expected to love it and then I just didn't. Question 5, question 6. Biggest surprise so far. I will have to say that for me that would be Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I had previously read The Disappearing Act of Annie Lennox, I want to say is the title of it, and I was a little bit underwhelmed. Read that a number of years ago, and then I had seen very mixed responses to Hamnet. People either seemed to love it or really dislike it, and so I had no idea where I was going to fall on the spectrum, but I thought this book was incredible. I loved the poeticness of it, I loved the quiet, and it's funny because my criticism of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue was the fact that it was too quiet, and so it kind of veered into being boring. This one, by contrast, was quiet, but it never felt like that. You could really feel the anticipation as we moved towards what we know is going to be the outcome of the storyline, which is that Shakespeare's son Hamnet is going to pass away. We know within a week of meeting Hamnet at the start of this story that he is going to have passed away, and so there is this constant drive towards that, but at the same time it's just so beautifully told. I loved the character and the depiction of Agnes, Hamnet's mother, Shakespeare's wife. I loved the side characters, I loved his sister Judith. It's just incredible, and many of the things that people have criticised it for were actually the things that I really liked about it. So yeah, definitely a surprise for me, but one that I'm so pleased that I took the chance and read it, and I loved it. Question 7, favourite new author so far. This may be something of a surprise because I'm gonna say Agatha Christie. So in June, for my book club, Just One More Page book club, we decided to read an Agatha Christie book, and we picked The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and I have never read an Agatha Christie book before. I have watched TV and movie adaptations, but I have never picked up and read a book, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the humour, I loved the pacing, I loved the characters, I loved the whole sense of trying to guess who done it before the big reveal at the end. I loved Poirot and his characterisation. Just thought it was so good. I will say that it probably helped that I'd watched the TV series with David Suchet, and so I could picture him in my head as we were listening to Poirot talk in this book. That probably contributed something to my enjoyment. But she is new to me. She's obviously not a new author, but she is new to me this year, and I thought it was brilliant, and I will definitely be looking for more Agatha Christie books to pick up in the near future. Question number 8, newest fictional crush so far. So this is a difficult one for me to answer because I don't really develop crushes on fictional characters. I will love characters, I will root for characters, I will empathise with characters, but I don't really develop crushes on characters necessarily, and I've certainly not read any books this year where that would be the outcome. So I'm going to cheat slightly, surprise surprise, and pick a character. They weren't new to me in 2021, but their presence in this book, which I did read in 2021, somewhat solidified my love for them as a character, and also it's the 4th book in a series, so it's not necessarily new. So that is Hallion. The book is Wrath by John Gwynne, and I'm a little bit heartbroken by the outcome of Hallion's story, not gonna lie, but as I say, I already knew him from the other 3 books in this series, and I read 3 and 4 this year, but the way that his story arc concludes in this book just solidified how much I liked him as a character, and it was totally heartbreaking how John Gwynne decided to end his story, and I'm still probably not over it. So if that counts as a fictional crush, then we'll go with that one. Question 9, newest favourite character so far. So for this, I'm going to go with Veronica from Away with the Penguins by Hazel Pryor. Veronica is just a fantastic character. She is sharp, she is witty, and she truly made this book as enjoyable as it was for me. So Away with the Penguins is about Veronica, a lady in her 80s who decides very randomly one day that she wants to do something big as she moves towards the end of her life. So she decides to go and stay with a group of scientists studying a colony of penguins in the Antarctic, and obviously because of her age there are some issues with her decision to do that, and this is just a very life-affirming, heartwarming, humorous book that was like having a warm hug, and I really, really enjoyed it. And in particular, Veronica's character, you know, we discover as the book progresses that she's gone through some difficulties, and she's not the most open person, and there are reasons for that, and we uncover what those reasons are, but she's just brilliant and I loved her, and I would definitely like to meet and match wits over a cup of tea with Veronica McCready 100%. Question number 10, a book that made you cry. The Four Winds, Hamnet, Lovely War, The Winter of the Witch. Take your pick. Question 11, a book that made you happy. For this, I have to go with The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. I know I've already used this phrase, but again, this was just such a heartwarming book that it was like having a warm hug at the end of the day. I really enjoyed the writing style. I really enjoyed the characters. It has quite a unique premise. We're following Leon and Tiffy moves into Leon's flat and they flat share, but the unique premise is that Leon works nights, so he occupies the flat during the day. Tiffy works during the day, so she occupies the flat during the night, and they begin to develop a relationship through leaving notes for one another, and it's just really sweet and heartwarming and entertaining, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't say that I enjoyed the author's follow-up book, but yeah, enjoyed this one a lot. Question number 12, a most beautiful book bought so far. Again, I'm gonna say The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, because this cover is just stunning, but I would also like to throw into the mix Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I mean, that cover, I have actually lost the book. The book is like this beautiful bright turquoise colour similar to the inside flaps. I don't know what I've done with it. I was using it for a photo and I've put it down and I just cannot find it. But yeah, so you kind of get the impression from the, the idea from the dust jacket what it looked like. But yeah, they are my two favourites, and I don't normally buy hardbacks, but I knew that I wanted to read them, so I knew that I wanted to buy them, and I'm very pleased that I now own those stunning copies of them as well. Well, I will own it when I can find it again and put it on my shelf, but who knows where it is. Your guess is as good as mine. And then the final question, 13, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? So again, I think I said this earlier, need to read. I don't really have any books that I need to read. Books that I would like to read, I've already mentioned the Ember Quartet, and then a couple that I've sort of been toying with picking up and then never seeming to get around to. We have Tombland by C.J. Sansom, which is a continuation of C.J. Sansom's Shard Lake series and is historical fiction, and I know I'm going to enjoy it. It's just the sheer size of it that is off-putting. Then we have quite a recent purchase for me, which is Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud, which I just think is going to be brilliant. Laura Purcell, Bone China, I read and really enjoyed The Corset by Laura Purcell. Picked up her other books and haven't read any yet, and I need to correct that because I thought that her writing and the story was just so atmospheric and so dark and so good, and I really think I'm going to enjoy them. I just need to pick it up. And then Rules of Civility by Immortals, again for the same reasons. Read A Gentleman in Moscow, thought it was incredible. It was one of my favourite books of last year. Really just like to pick up some more of his writing, and that is it. I realised that a lot of my answers to these questions were I couldn't just pick one, or this is a bit of a cheat, but on the whole, in reflecting on what I've read, I've had a pretty good reading year, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue aside, and I'm quite pleased with some of the books that I have picked up and read so far this year, and that makes me excited for how the rest of 2021 is going to play out. Hopefully I can read as much and I can enjoy as much, if not more, the books that I pick up later in the year. So as I said earlier, if you are interested in doing this tag, then consider yourself tagged. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I have answered with. Let me know what your thoughts were. As always, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to give me the thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. I hope that everyone is keeping safe and well, and I will see you all soon.